Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you, although in a virtual way, and congratulations to the organizers of this international event, which is absolutely timely, important, because it looks like everybody talks about sustainability. In the media, the word sustainability grew up in terms of citations, in terms of articles. In the advertisement world, the word sustainability is almost everywhere. It looks like all food and cars and any other product is produced according to sustainability principles. Actually, some people say that the term sustainability is abused, is burned out. Is it true? Well, I hope not. I've been working in this field since 2001, when I became chief statistician of the OECD in Paris. And at the time, we were trying to measure the sustainability of economic, social, environmental policies. At the time, some countries were even forbidding the citation of the term sustainability. Now everybody talks about this, and we have to recognize this. Policymakers are doing a lot of efforts at international, supranational, and national level, and even at local level, to try to become more sustainable. And the same applies to private sector, not only manufacturers or service providers, but also those who work in finance. And we cannot deny that a lot of things happened over the last 5 years, happening right now, and are in the pipeline for significant changes in the way in which our economies and societies work. Is this enough to avoid the ecological crisis, the climate crisis, the increase of inequalities, a long-term perspective of public policies, a change in the way companies work? Unfortunately not. We have to do much more. In a book that I published 3.5 years ago about the sustainable utopia, I was trying to identify some of the key ingredients of this change. First of all, technological change, because without a huge shift in technologies, there is no way to give energy, food, and to work together and move together without killing the planet. The second ingredient was the capacity of mobilizing culture, from a cultural point of view, people, policy leaders, business leaders. And the third was governance. And this is where I think your work at this conference is particularly important. Because governance is about changing the way in which people make these collective decisions, make choices in terms of investments, saving, and the way in which we work collectively together in a more efficient and unified way. Greenwashing is a big risk, and especially in the business sector and the financial sector, a lot of efforts have been done to try to measure how sustainable companies are, how sustainable investment funds are. And Europe, from this point of view, is indeed at the forefront at international level, finding a way to define a taxonomy of economic activities, very strict rules for financial choices in terms of to be recognized as in favor of sustainability, with the emission of social and green bonds to finance the next generation EU effort, an historical effort. Europe, the European Union, will become the first emittent of bonds, social green SDG bonds worldwide. We know that there are some problems, issues that we have to address and solve in order to avoid the risk of, or at least minimize the risk of greenwashing. First of all, common definitions. Second, transparency by companies but also by public institutions about what they are doing, and adopting indicators about outcomes, but also indicators about the way in which decisions are made can help a lot in this perspective. Third important element is the international comparability of taxonomies, of standards, and we know that we are a little bit in a messy situation because the market pushed a lot of companies to propose their own taxonomies, their own set of indicators, their own ways to evaluate how green a company, an investment fund, a government is. And also at European level, this kind of confusion is still present. Now, let me conclude these introductory remarks saying that the Italian government is not only fully committed to contribute to the European Green Deal and the full implementation of the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience, which is a way to create an ecological transition, a social transition, and a digital transition. But in our ministry in particular, we are investing a lot in terms of changing the way in which decisions are made. The name of this ministry changed because I proposed that to the Prime Minister Mario Draghi, from Ministry for Infrastructures and Transport into Sustainable Infrastructures and Mobility. It's a cultural shift that now is being reflected in procedures, for example, on the way in which construction projects have to be prepared, looking at the impact of individual projects on the ecological targets, on digital targets, and of course, well-being of people targets. Is just a beginning of a revolution that will take time to implement, but not so much time. The introduction of incentives for companies who invest in women, in young people, who reduce the CO2 emissions, and so on and so forth, are already in our legislation now, and the first tenders about the construction of new railroads have been already published. So it's true, we have a lot of issues to solve, but at the same time we shouldn't recognize or dismiss the changes that are happening. Thank you again for your work, and I look forward for reading your conclusions and see whether we can implement your recommendations in our work. Some of those who are today present in this event, starting from Giovanna Melandri, are part of a scientific commission that I established exactly on new ways to finance infrastructure and mobility systems, looking at sustainability as a key element, key ingredient of these investments. Thank you again, and see you soon.